Good afternoon and welcome to our live feed. We're talking today about managing your pet's weight. I'm Dr. Adam from Greencross Vets and I'm proudly joined with...
I'm Dr. Jessica Mills from Hills Pet Nutrition.
And today we're really going to talk about ways in which we can help you with your pet's weight. Why it's really important is because we know about 40% of our pets are overweight, our dogs and cats are overweight.
Absolutely, and I think in Australia we've not done a survey for over 15 years. The latest information out of places like the States is it's over 50% of dogs and cats that are overweight or obese, and I think that's probably fairly similar over here too.
It's quite important. Did you know, Jess, that over the past 12 weeks, Petbarn have been running a campaign, a challenge if you like, to assess dogs, I suppose, what they're fed. It's called See the Change. It's a challenge over 12 weeks, and what we've done is we've actually recruited 8 dog pet parents to really track their food. We've changed their food over the past time to a very super premium food and really track the change.
Yeah, it's been such a fantastic campaign so far. I've been watching the videos that come out each week and I'm loving seeing the changes that are happening with Jess and Yoda, who are being fed on that Hills Perfect weight. And the changes that their pet owners are reporting, really, you can see the difference nutrition can make.
Such an important thing. This is a live feed today, guys. So out there in the audience, please feel free to tell us your questions. We'll be answering your questions. This is live. We are passionate about weight in dogs and cats. We have Chris here to shout out questions, your questions, and we're happy to answer them as we go throughout today.
Thank you, Adam. So to start things off, how can I tell if my pet is overweight?
I think the easiest way, Chris, thank you for that, is to really look at your pet. Really look at them from a distance, get up and have a close feel of them. Use your hands to have a feel. You want to be able to feel the rib cage. You should never want to be able to see the rib cage, but you want to be able to feel them to make sure that there's a tuck-in or a silhouette from the chest all the way back to the pelvis. You also want to be able to, would you agree, Jess, from the side?
See that tuck-in from the waist back up towards those hind legs. It's a really important thing.
I think there are really 3 ways to check if your pet is ideal weight by doing those 3.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
So Jess, how can obesity affect your pet's health and quality of life?
It's a really big thing, I think, obesity. We're finding that, you know, when we're talking about obesity, we're really talking about pets carrying 20% or more excess body weight. It is a lot, and I think for pet owners, they feel that that really is a huge amount. But what we know is that given the small size of our dogs and cats, that can be as little as 1 kilo for your average cat, maybe 5 or 6 kilos for your sort of golden retriever, so it's not a huge amount. And you're probably aware, you'll see it in practice all the time, but that extra weight will really increase some of the risks of disease conditions. So things like diabetes.
Heart disease, for example.
Absolutely.
I suppose bladder stones, we can see issues.
Yeah.
Arthritis is a big one.
It's a really big one that's affecting them. And all that affects their general quality of life. It means that those pets are less active, they're less interacting with their families. So it has a real flow-on effect to the whole pet family and pet household.
And I think another thing that we do see in practice is probably as the weather warms up in summertime, dogs that are overweight, cats too, are very prone or more prone to the effects of heat stress.
It's true, it's a good point, Adam.
So how do I find out my pet's ideal weight?
Probably the best way is to really have your pet assessed by a veterinarian. So Greencross Vets provide the ability to have your pet weighed. So in conjunction with what the physical scales say, Hills have developed an awesome chart. Yeah,
I really like this body fat index chart, body fat index risk chart, Adam. What we're looking at here is really simple for vets, vet nurses, and pet owners themselves to actually have a look and see where their pet fits. Using those key things that you were talking about. What's their silhouette look like? Can you feel the ribs and stuff?
Is there a tuck in from the chest back to the pelvis, for example?
That's exactly right. And then essentially, if we go to the back of the chart, by looking at their current weight and working out which of those groups that they fit into, we can actually work out what their weight should be. So for a 30 kilo dog that might be 40% overweight, if we go across, we can see that they should actually weigh about 24.8 kilos.
Great, fantastic.
So tell me, how do so many pets actually become overweight?
I think there are a lot of factors in that when dogs become overweight. I think it breaks into 2 reasons. One is the amount of food that they have. Would you agree that if they're fed too much of their normal food?
Absolutely. And I think it can be really hard sometimes for pet owners. If you think about it, you go, well, feed a cup of food. But what's a cup?
What's a cup? Too many cups.
That's right.
Yeah.
I recommend using the cup that your manufacturer provides. You can get these from your pet stores or your vet clinics, and actually looking and doing it on there. If you're feeding for weight loss, one of my little handy hints, Adam, I don't know if you guys recommend this, but if you measure out and see how much it weighs, so say it's half a cup, if you cut the cup at that level, then you can't overfeed, because anything
extra... over-tempting.
That's right, because it's so easy to kind of overestimate how much is in that cup.
Well, I guess the other way also is that if we're feeding a diet probably not for the right life stage or the right age of the pet, for example, if we're feeding a middle-aged dog, for example, a puppy food, which is a lot higher in calories, a lot higher in energy.
Absolutely, it's a really good point. I think that's a big one that pet owners may not switch at the right time, or be feeding something aimed at an active animal with an animal that's mainly indoors or a more sedate lifestyle. I think that's a really big one. And obviously the final one that we should mention is treats.
The dreaded treats. The dreaded
Absolutely.
Treats. Dreaded treats.
It's so easy, isn't it, when our dogs or our cats, they give us those big brown eyes.
Give me some food, give me some treats, I'm hungry.
Yeah, feed me now. And we tend to give in to them. And it's very easy for that to quickly add up.
We know a slice of cheese here, a bit of salami there, a day here and a day there's not going to make a difference, but over days and weeks to years, those extra calories do add up, don't they?
Absolutely, and I think we always look at it with our eyes. A small cube of cheese, you know, a slice of cheese, 20 odd grams or whatever, doesn't seem like much. It's actually the equivalent of us eating, say, 3 hamburgers if we were a small cat to just get that small slice of cheese.
It's a lot of calories as well. Especially if they're not exercising, they're not burning off the calories.
Exactly. So I think, you know, we're always best to just be aware that those little things that we give them as that little bit of extra love can quickly add up to extra pounds.
Thanks, guys. So are some pets more prone to obesity than others? If so, why?
We think some dogs and cats may be more prone to obesity. We know that obesity is a very common issue that we have in the community. We know that some dogs, like the Labrador, for example, are quite prone.
Love the food.
They love their food. They love their food. What are your thoughts on that, Jess?
Look, I think we know that there is a bit of breed predisposition, but I actually think the biggest factor after we look at what their diet is actually their activity levels.
Yeah.
And actually, as we said before, matching their diet to those activity levels, like you'd be aware that once a pet gets desexed, we know that their metabolic rate drops by
about 20%?
That's exactly right.
Yep,
so
yep.
Cutting down the food at that point is important. And if you think about cats these days, a large proportion are living inside only.
Correct.
They're getting a lot less exercise.
So a lot less sedentary lifestyle. They're not moving around a lot. They're having the same calories.
Exactly.
They're not exercising. They're gaining weight, predisposing them to health conditions.
Exactly. So I think, you know, while breed's part of it, I think it's all those other things that really probably provide a more important thing that we can actually manage.
Correct.
So we've actually got a question coming in from Facebook from Eric. Are there any human foods that I can feed my dog?
Thanks, Eric. That's a really good question, very, very common question. There are a lot of human foods you can technically feed your dog, but a lot of foods can be dangerous potentially to feed your dog. And I suppose if you're focusing on your dog losing weight or not gaining weight, human foods may be counterproductive. And we don't want to encourage, if you're really wanting to lose weight with your dog, or your dog lose weight, I should say, then feeding treats, human treats, is probably not the ideal thing to do.
No, I'd agree with that.
Yeah,
I think it's much harder. As we said, you can sometimes underestimate the calorie content of those foods that we're feeding.
I mean, if we give a bit of cheese or a bit of rice, for example, that's a lot of carbs, a lot of calories. Even to us, it's a small amount. To them, it's a lot.
Exactly. I think, you know, sometimes we'll look at it with our eyes and the portion size that we use, whereas they're much, much smaller body frames. So I tend to be a bit cautious about that kind of thing, particularly when you're talking about weight loss.
Correct.
So Jess, tell us a bit more. How does weight management food work?
Look, it's one of those things. For us at Hills, we really believe that knowledge is the first ingredient. And science has really driven the creation of our diet since the 1930s, if you believe it. And that's really where the development of some of these different diets have come. So with the management of overweight pets, what we've learned is that the biology of overweight pets is very different to the biology of lean pets. And so that's enabled us to develop Hill Science Diet Perfect Weight, which works in a different way.
How does it work?
It contains a blend of ingredients and they actually work together to help support the pet's own metabolism to help achieve that healthy body weight. And there's actually been studies where over 70% of pets who've been on this diet have lost weight within 10 weeks.
That's impressive.
Yeah, it's a really fantastic thing that really makes some long-term changes for these guys.
That's great. I mean, we know that again, it's a problem in our pets. They tend to gain weight very, very quickly. This is the perfect way to help them reduce their weight.
Exactly right.
Over a tailored time frame.
Exactly. That's the thing. It's important. As you're well aware, we don't want them to lose weight too quickly. We really want this to be a process over a period of time, and that often, if we're talking about them losing 20-30% of their body weight, it's going to take them a few weeks to months. So usually we're looking sort of 4 to 6 months for that sort of level of weight loss.
Right.
I mean, could we just feed them less normal food? For example, halve their portion size?
I guess when we're feeding them less food or less calories, their metabolic rate does change, and they are not going to utilize their calories. In fact, if they're feeding less calories, the metabolic rate will actually slow down. So it's actually not a great way of encouraging weight loss.
No, I think that's the thing. And the other thing is they end up more hungry.
Correct.
They don't tend to have that addition of, things like they're going to make them feel nice and full and sated, which leads to a lot more begging behaviour.
Stealing socks.
That's exactly
stealing
right.
rubbish bins.
Exactly. Keeping you awake at 3 o'clock in the morning,
I want food,
let me in, give me food now. Which really, that's one of the biggest reasons I think that a lot of diets fail for pet owners, is that keeping that compliance is really hard. So you're much better off to go with a specific weight loss food that's really going to help keep them nice and full and sated and get that, a normal way, rather than trying to cut back their food.
Probably not dissimilar to the human world too.
Exactly.
I would
right.
imagine.
I know, yeah, exactly.
I know too.
Yeah, we've all been there.
Correct.
So my pet's a fussy eater. How can I get them to eat the right diet?
I think eating the right diet involves transitioning them very, very slowly onto the correct diet. And I think a lot of pet owners make the unfortunate mistake of transitioning their food too quickly. But there are ways of encouraging changing the food to make sure it's done slowly to transition the food. I think 10 to 14 days, Jess, is the way.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. 10 to 14 days. Start off with your bowl of ordinary food. Maybe even just throw a few little kibbles on top.
Mix it around.
Mix it around. Let them get used to. You've got to think that when they're having a new diet, it's a whole lot of new flavours, aromas, textures.
And your experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, if you'd been eating McDonald's every day of your life and someone went, here's a chicken salad, your first reaction is, what is this?
Correct.
So I think it's a case of going, actually, if we do it slowly, we get them used to those new flavours, textures, aromas, and do it over 10 to 14 days. For a really fussy pet, I might even do it over 3 to 4 weeks.
And we might even mix in a bit of other food, a bit of the tin variety, for example, to enhance those flavours, the palatability.
Absolutely, it's a really good point, because things like the stew formulations, they're really flavoursome, they're really appetising, they've got more of the aromas. And for the cats, we've got those really simple single-serve pouches, chunks and gravy. They really enjoy that kind of stuff.
With salmon.
Yep, absolutely.
Yum.
Salmon or chicken, so you can't go wrong.
Great.
Could you tell us about slow feeder bowls as well?
So I guess slow feeder bowls, the design of slow feeder bowls is to encourage dogs and cats to eat slowly.
Yep.
I suppose encourage them to chew. I suppose to stretch out the meal rather than over a couple of seconds or a minute to over the time. I suppose they're encouraging to chew their food. I suppose digest their food, have better quality stools. I could see.
I think so, and I think also it's that thing. Pets get often the reason pets come back and say, "Well, where's the rest of my food?" is that sort of boredom side of things.
Yeah.
They've got, I've eaten it. It's 30 seconds. It's gone. Particularly if you're a Labrador, and they go, "Well, what's going on?" Whereas if we can slow down that process, we allow the stomach to stretch slowly, they get that sated feeling, so they get all the hormones telling them, no, I actually am full. It actually improves the whole experience for them, and actually means that they feel quite happy.
I think some of these slow feeders, they've got to actually press a button for the food to be released, so they can. It's a bit of mental stimulation,
I think that's
which is
the
great
thing.
in these times where we're spend a lot more time inside.
Exactly, and I think that mental stimulation can never be underestimated for these guys, for dogs and for cats as well, actually.
That's right.
So Jess, you touched on this earlier, but how much do I know to feed my pet? How do I mix the food if I'm feeding wet and dry food?
It's, I think, a really tricky thing. Sometimes for pet owners,
we find a challenge,
how do you work out how to feed? There are feeding guides on pack, and they're a fantastic starting point. With the weight management foods, it can be a little bit tricky because there's two separate guides. One's for the weight loss side of things, and then actually with something like Perfect Weight, once they've lost that weight, you can feed them slightly more to just help them maintain that nice body weight that they've got to. So I would look at that for a starting guide. If you're feeding a mix of wet and dry, then look at both and adjust it. They are starting, you may need to tweak just to get to that right bit. Obviously, you know, vets like yourself, your pet stores, or our Hills helpline are always there to be able to help with that as well.
But there's a pretty significant guide on the back of the pack. It's generally to say a dog with this amount of weight, this much food.
Absolutely.
And that's really important.
It's really important. And the other really important thing is make sure you feed them for that ideal body weight that we discussed.
Great.
So don't feed them for what they're currently weighing.
Yep.
We're going to be feeding that excess body weight. Feed them for what we want them to be weighing.
Great.
So we know how to feed them, but when and how often should I be feeding my pet?
I tend to recommend usually twice a day suits most pets and also pet owners. I think it's got to fit with the lifestyle of the family.
I think in practice we generally recommend twice a day.
Yeah.
Sometimes 3 times a day, depends on the lifestyle, if you're home or not home. I think we're stepping away from the once a day feed.
I think so. I think it tends to lead to that sort of gorging of food.
Correct.
And then lead to the hunger.
But I think what we sometimes see in practice is that a lot of people wish to feed double the volume. So whatever they want to calculate on the back of the packet, morning and night, where we should be really dividing it, should we, Jess?
That's absolutely, it's a really good point, yes. Whatever you look at on the pack is actually that daily feeding amount. So actually making sure you divide that into the number of meals is a really important thing. And I think for some pet owners, they find it easier to maybe do some dry in the morning when they're about to go out for work so the animal's got something to nibble on, and then maybe some wet when they come home in the evening.
Or when the kids wake up in the morning, the kids go to bed at night time, or make it a little bit easier, a bit of routine.
Absolutely. I think routine definitely helps.
Great.
And Jess, you touched earlier on treats, but surely there's some healthier options I can give instead.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, I think, when it comes to treats. I think often when we see our pets coming to us and they're wanting food, a lot of the time that they're wanting is our attention. So the easiest way I find for treats, I don't know what you think, Adam, is I go, this is my daily amount of food, take out a small handful and keep that aside, and then you can actually just use the same food as a treat type behaviour throughout the day. And I think that makes it really simple. They're not having to worry about calories from other things.
And even having the food for the day in the lunchbox, and the lunchbox is for the pet. If it's in the lunchbox, that's the daily food. Don't add to that.
Yes.
Add to that. That's a common trap. Certainly take from that.
It's a really good point, and particularly I think when you've got multiple people in a household, because I think one of the things is mum might have fed it and then dad goes, oh, the dog's making all this noise. Has anyone fed it? I'm going to feed it. Kids come home, they feed it. If everyone knows it's all in that lunchbox, it's a nice way to do it.
Correct.
Fantastic. So moving forward, when it comes to exercise, what else can I do to help my dog lose weight?
I think exercise is incredibly important because we need to ensure that calories that are ingested from the food is actually burnt off.
Yeah.
So I think exercising during the day for dogs outside is incredibly important. Interact with them. Cats as well, I think, Jess, is an easy thing, even if they're indoors.
Absolutely. I mean, cats love to, have little play toys. Sometimes, that little laser light, catch the little light beam works quite nicely for them. So getting them moving. I think the other thing with dogs, it doesn't have to be that we have to go for, 10-mile walks every day. It's got to fit in with the lifestyle. But sometimes just adding an extra 5 minutes at the end of the walk, changing your route so you're walking up a hill or up a flight of stairs or so, rather than just on the flat. Little things that they can do that can really just help it burn those extra calories.
It's important that we do ensure the exercise is adequate to burn calories off, because that will also influence how much food we're going to be feeding as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's that thing. When we're in that weight loss side of things, absolutely, we want to be balancing, in any point of life, we want to be balancing weight and food. I generally say I wouldn't necessarily feed more just because they're exercising more. I would check in with the guys at the vets and see what they're losing. Are they losing weight at the right sort of rate? If they seem to be losing weight faster than we want, then we might increase their food a little bit more to compensate for the extra exercise they're getting.
So every month or so they should be visiting the vet, do you think, and having that checked up, do you think?
Yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely. To be honest, if you're trying to get your pet to lose weight, often as much as every fortnight, if you can manage it, you can just swing past the vets. It doesn't have to be a big thing. Pop them on the scales there or at your pet stores as well. And that can just give you that constant check-in and motivation to know that, yes, it's working.
Great.
Fantastic. So now it's winter, it's kind of cold and dark in the mornings and in the evenings. I don't really want to walk my dog as long as I normally want to in the warmer months. How can I get around that?
It's really hard, really hard. And often we find that with the cold mornings, the cold nights, the rain, you want to stay in bed. You don't want to get out.
Absolutely.
But we still feed the same amount of food.
Exactly.
So the calories are coming in and it's the same. And then exercising, what do you think about that?
Look, I think, you know, there's some little things that we can do. We talked about puzzle feeders before. There's little tricks like dividing the food into multiple meals and actually feeding in 2 or 3 locations around the house.
Like a treasure hunt.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So the pet, whether it's a dog or a cat, they've actually got to work for their food a little bit more. They've got to wander from one place to another. And they're actually we're trying to increase almost that incidental exercise, if you like.
Yeah. But even though going for a short walk twice a day, maybe towards the middle of the day, before it gets dark, putting a jacket on the dogs.
Exactly.
They're still going to exercise for a little bit.
That's right. I mean, that's obviously important for their mental stimulation as much as anything else, and they love getting out and about, but it might be shorter, it might be going to a park and playing a little bit of fetch under the lights or something like that.
Yep, great.
What about for my indoor cat? What can I do for exercise?
Indoor cats love to play. I think, as you alluded to before,
Yeah.
using those laser torches, those little string toys that you can play around with, hiding their food.
Absolutely. Look, I think they're the real key things. I think we sometimes forget, we know that cats love to sleep and that's often our default setting, but they are actually really playful creatures and giving them the outlets for that. I think hiding their food, you can actually teach your cat to scavenger hunt for their food and actually wrap it in little bits of newspaper and hide it in little places, and they get quite used to that. It's quite a challenge for them.
Most of a night time where they're most active or more active rather than during the day can be a challenge, having a cat running around.
Yes.
Running around your dining room table, for example, or your living room as well. But there are a lot of interactive toys they can use, as what you had mentioned before.
I think so. I think, finding ways, and they love it. So, you know, as we said, those torches, those feed toys and things, it's all ways that can really help.
It's really important to try and actively promote exercising your indoor cats, because we know that indoor cats are more prone to weight gain. We know all the health concerns. We know the urinary tract issues as well.
Exactly. I think it's so true, and that's why we've got, you know, various formulations for them. So things like the perfect weight diet, things like our indoor cat formulation, things that are really lower calorie options that really can help with those guys. So doing a mix of that and also feeding them, playing with them and encouraging that exercise really work hand in hand.
It's also good if we're stimulating our pets to exercise indoors. We're also helping ourselves with also stimulation.
Exactly. And it's that interaction. I think you often find that they'll beg less and you'll get less of that, you know, constant asking for food because they're getting that interaction and enjoyment through other things such as exercise.
Correct.
So Adam, we've had a question come in from Tisha on Facebook. She says that her dog eats a lot of grass and sticks. She's been told by a trainer that it's possible because he's lacking the right nutrients. What foods provide good nutrients?
So I guess that it's a common thing that we do see in dogs eating grass. We don't really know why dogs eat grass. Definitely there's thoughts that they are lacking a complete and balanced diet. I think that feeding a complete and balanced diet would be the first and foremost.
Absolutely. I think that's the real key, is you want to make sure they're on a well-made diet. So something that comes from a manufacturer that you trust, that you know is complete and balanced. You can look for the statement on the bag. There's an AFCO statement that will tell you that a diet is complete and balanced and who it's aimed for, to make sure it's aimed for an adult dog compared to a puppy or something like that.
I mean, eating grass and sticks is not necessarily a sign of being unwell.
No.
But if they're preferentially eating grass and sticks and not over their normal food, they perhaps should see the veterinarian.
Absolutely. I think it's a really important thing that they come in and see you guys to just get them checked out and make sure there's nothing else going on.
Great.
So when it comes time to feeding your pets, Can you give us your top three tips for helping pet owners feed their pets?
I think the top 3 guidelines or rules or take-home message for feeding the pets is to choose a really good quality food.
Yeah.
I think number 2, feed the required amount of food. And the best way to do that is to look at the back of the packet of the food, to measure the food, to be consistent, try and avoid overfeeding.
Yes.
And try and resist the temptation. I think, Jess, would you agree? Treats.
I think so. I think you've covered my top 3 perfectly, Adam.
Treats are okay.
Treats are okay, but just watch
in moderation.
out.
In moderation.
And think about why we're treating them. Are there other ways that we can give them that interaction? But I agree, feeding a really good quality diet and feeding the right diet for their age and lifestyle, as we said. So making sure that it's really matching the pet to the diet.
Yeah, matching the breed and the life stage.
Absolutely. And what do they do all day? And you're right, measuring is so important. You can do it by the cup measurement. Most of the bags will also have a weight measurement. So if you're really trying to be accurate, weigh the food out the first time.
Great.
Get your cup, put a little, mark on there so you know exactly to what point you should be feeding. Or as I said, cut it off so you can't inadvertently
I like that
overfeed.
idea, cutting the cup off so you have no choice.
That's exactly
Have no
right.
choice.
Anything extra is going to fall out.
Great. So we've actually had a question coming from Debbie on Facebook. She wants to know, is canned tuna okay for cats every now and then?
Thanks, Debbie. Very good question as well. I think canned tuna is okay to give cats now and then. I think that it is it is a good protein source. It is, especially if it's a human grade, it's good quality.
Yep.
But should never replace I suppose a diet for cats, should it?
No, I think that's right. I think, again, as a small amount, as a little bit of a treat, it's not the worst thing. I would go a salt-reduced option.
Correct.
So, probably not in that sort of brine where you've got the high salt content.
Probably not the flavoured chili mango type varieties.
No, they may not appreciate that.
They might not appreciate that, but...
but a small amount on occasion,
Now and then's okay.
And I think one thing we didn't mention with regards to any of these sort of foods for a treat type thing, they shouldn't be more than about 5 to 10% of the diet. So we're really talking a small amount. And the rest, if you've got a nice, complete and balanced diet, then I think it fits in fine.
I think if we're feeding something like tuna, we probably should be mixing in with the food. So our cats don't become dependent on tuna.
Yep.
They want to have the tuna as part of another packaged meal, if you like.
So.
Great. We've actually just had a really good question coming from Tracy. She says she's tried a lot of different grain-free cat foods, but it causes diarrhea every time. Why is that happening?
Very good question. Very good question. I think any cat, any dog, any cat in this instance can, I suppose, not agree with certain foods. I think that if it is persistently causing a problem with diarrhea, my recommendation, I'm sure you'll probably agree, is to probably check in with your vet.
I think
to make
so.
sure there's no underlying medical reason that could be contributing to diarrhea. Yes, we do see allergies in cats, we do see upset tummies in cats, but I think there are so many different causes of this in cats. Probably best to see your regular veterinarian.
I think so. I think, it's one of those things. I think there's a lot of grain-free diets now on the market, and it's kind of working out, well, why are we feeding those?
Correct.
The reason that we've got grains often within the diet is actually just for a nice form of energy within the diet.
Well, they are used as energy, aren't they?
Exactly.
They're burned off as normal fuel sources.
Exactly, and they're a really important part to provide that energy without, impacting on other nutrients. So sometimes it's a case of seeing what else is within those diets.
Correct.
When you cut out one thing, you've got to add other things in.
Correct.
So
I agree.
If it's causing a constant problem, totally, always see your vet for anything where you're concerned about a health issue.
Definitely recommended.
So we've got a question here. What's the best food for a dog with chronic gastritis?
I don't really think there's a best food for dogs with chronic gastritis. There are many great foods for gastritis. The best food would be the one to feed that causes the least amount of problems.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot the hills produce.
We've got a whole lot in our prescription diet range. There's some fantastic ones that, you guys at Greencross Vets would be well aware of. I think because there's so many different causes to it, there's a few different strategies that you can go down when you've got these problems, that the best thing to do is go and chat to you guys, go and see your vet, find out what's going on, and they can actually provide you with the right diet for the right cause. Because, yeah, those signs that they get can sometimes be so vague. There needs to be more information gathered.
And often it's a bit complicated, isn't it? I mean, there are often many reasons why dogs have got gastritis, and it's important to find out which one is causing the problem.
That's exactly right.
And then we can match the type of food to the patient.
Exactly. Some
Correct.
foods are going to help with the sort of the gut health, the microbiome health. Some foods are going to help with, you know,
fibre, for example.
Absolutely.
Yep.
All those kind of things. But really, I think the first step with anything like that, go and chat to your vet, find out what they recommend.
Great.
So we've got another question from Tracy on Facebook. She said she's got an 8.5 kilogram indoor cat who has been on a diet for years and still gains weight and is constantly looking for food. Any advice for Tracy?
I guess I'd be interested to find out what you're feeding, Tracy. You know, I definitely obviously recommend the Hills Perfect Weight. There are a lot of different types of weight loss foods out there that work in different ways. So some may be light style diets, which are just lower in calories. I guess the other thing is, if you haven't seen a vet, I would want to know if there's anything else going on. There can be underlying diseases.
We do see medical issues that can cause weight gain in dogs
Exactly.
and cats, despite the appropriate diet.
Exactly.
And we wouldn't want to suggest a weight loss or ideal weight, perfect weight diet if there's an underlying medical reason. So I think for that matter, we would probably suggest.
Yeah, I think
see,
so.
yeah.
If you've been doing all the right things and you're still gaining weight, get a full checkup. They may want to do bloods or things like that. Find out what's
Correct.
really going on.
Yeah, it might be as simple as seeing your veterinarian, asking them for some blood tests maybe,
Yeah.
find out what's going on in the background,
Absolutely.
developing a tailored plan
Absolutely.
and moving forward from there.
And moving, I totally
Yep.
agree, Adam.
Great. So we've had another question from JH Potter. JH says that my 2-year-old terrier needs to lose 2 kilograms. Unfortunately, JH is a bit older and can't walk her as much. What do you recommend in that situation?
It's often we get the questions about senior pets that have difficulty walking because of arthritis or other medical conditions, what to feed them. And I think there's so much that we can do to help these pets.
Yep.
I think from feeding the correct type of food,
Yep.
even a weight loss type of food, specific weight loss type of food.
Yeah, absolutely. I think losing that weight can really help with that mobility. And I think it's important to realise, as much as we talk about exercise being an important part of it, what you feed them is probably the most important part of any sort of diet strategy.
Yeah.
So I think making sure you're on the right diet first and foremost. And again, I think with a lot of these things, I think with particular cases, we're going to keep saying it, but chatting to your vet, because your vet may be able to come up with other diet strategies. There are specific diets that we have in our prescription range, for example, that help with both weight loss and arthritis at the same time.
But if this dog in particular is a senior dog and this dog is sore because of arthritis, we need to be able to addressing the pain from this dog is suffering.
Absolutely, it's really important. So I think, you know, when the vets can really help with that sort of multimodal way of doing things.
Correct.
So looking at them from all different ways
Correct.
rather than just that nutrition side.
Correct.
Great answers, guys. So we're going to wrap up we're going to wrap up shortly, so we've got space for 2 more questions.
Great.
Mel has said that her cat is super old and doesn't exercise much now.
Yeah.
She prefers fresh mints, not tin food or dry at all. Is that okay? Her weight is okay, but I guess Mel's worried if she isn't getting all the right nutrients.
I think feeding fresh mints or fresh food in general to dogs and cats is quite a common thing to do. I think that from a clinical point of view, we do see some concerns or highlight concerns with feeding mints per se,
Yep.
because it's not a complete and balanced diet. And often we see in our older cats with underlying possible kidney disease, meat's quite high in protein. What do you think?
Yeah, it's high in protein. It's often high in the phosphorus as well.
Yep.
So there are things that it contains that may not be ideal for a senior pet. I think, you know, absolutely. Chatting with your vet, finding out different ways, either whether you can balance the diet that they're on, add other things in, to make it something that your cat's going to enjoy, but is still going to provide that right nutrition for them as they age. I think you're right, is really important.
But also we do see a significant amount of arthritis in cats.
Absolutely.
And often they are too sore to walk around. And we don't often recognise that we should be recognising that more.
Yeah, I think it's really, it's under-recognised because cats don't tend to show the traditional limping around
Correct.
type thing. Often we think actually our cats are getting better behaved because they're no longer jumping onto the kitchen counter to try and steal the food.
But they want to, but they can't.
But that's exactly
They want to,
right.
but they can't.
They just don't have the ability to do
Yep.
it anymore. And I think we're starting to realise that more. And there are things that we can utilise to help them, be it nutrition or otherwise.
Great.
So.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys. So next question, well, final question really, is from Jasmine. She said that she got home from work last night. Her cheeky 10-year-old Tabby has gone through the pantry and eaten some uncooked pasta. Should Jasmine be concerned about that?
Uncooked pasta, very unusual very unusual to hear cats eating strange things like that. Uncooked pasta is probably the first I've heard.
No, I was going to say it's not one that I've come across.
I think that anything like pasta always has the potential to cause problems. I think the biggest problem that I can foresee happening or potentially happening is that this pasta becomes stuck.
Yep.
And it can cause a physical obstruction. And that would be my concern.
Yeah.
Potential concern. What are your thoughts?
It's a really interesting one. I'd agree. I think that, and I think depending on how much that sort of swelling in the stomach, because it's dried and then it gets in with the juices, it swells and they start to feel, quite unwell with it. I think the best advice, Jasmine, is, what we've been saying a bit of here, but if you're worried at all, if your cat starts acting strangely, starts vomiting, goes off its food, just seems lethargic or not well in itself, take them to vet.
I think so. And I think the first that you see them unwell, please take them straight away.
Yeah,
often
absolutely.
If you leave it gets worse.
Yep. You're better off to go and better be safe than sorry.
Correct. Correct.
So with that being our final question, maybe we can just rehash those top 3 tips.
So I think the top 3 tips for managing your pet's weight, I think, is to feed them a complete and balanced diet.
Aimed at their age and their lifestyle. So, if you're wanting to manage weight, something like Hill's Perfect Weight's a great option.
Make sure they exercise them to ensure that they burn off the calories that they're having.
Yep. Measure your food so that we know that we're feeding the right amount for what they want. And not too much.
And our probably our fourth one,
we're going to have a bonus one for you guys tonight.
Treats.
Yeah.
Watch the treats that you feed. Be incredibly careful with the treats that you feed.
Absolutely.
Treats contain calories, which contributes to being overweight.
Easiest way that we can add calories without even thinking about
Correct.
it. Thanks so much, guys.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you've really enjoyed this impromptu live session on managing your pet's weight.
Thanks, Adam. It's been great to be here.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for Hills.